Okay, so here's the thing you need to know about me before this story even starts. I used to be the girl who cried ghost. Middle school, back in 2010, I was that kid. The one who'd jump out from behind lockers. The one who'd swear something was standing behind you just to watch you flinch. And the annoying part? People actually believed me sometimes because I'd built this whole reputation of seeing things. Whether or not that reputation was earned is a different conversation. The point is, I used it, constantly, on my friends, on anyone who'd fall for it. So when I tell you that something legitimately terrifying happened to me and my friends at a school camping trip, something that had absolutely nothing to do with me faking it, I need you to sit with the irony of that for a second. Because trust me, I've sat with it for over a decade. My name's Adele. This is what happened the summer everyone finally learned I wasn't the only thing worth being scared of. So, middle school, summer camp. Standard stuff, right? Except this wasn't just our school. We were paired up with another school for a joint overnight retreat. 2 days, 1 night. A bunch of kids who barely knew each other thrown into cabins together to bond over trust falls and bug spray. The camp itself was massive. I'm talking almost 10 hectares of land, thick forest on every side, a river cutting through part of it, and scattered across the property, these little wooden shelter houses. Guest cabins, basically, mostly empty, used for overflow groups or storage. Beyond that, there was a main hall for group activities, a dining canteen, and the actual sleeping quarters where we'd all be crashing that night. First evening, after dinner, they gathered everyone into the main hall for the classic meet the other school thing. Every class doing a little presentation, a performance, that whole icebreaker routine. Fine. Whatever. Forgettable. It's what happened after that I still think about. Once the hall event wrapped up, a group of us, 5 or 6 of us, I genuinely don't remember the exact number anymore, decided to wander off and check out the property before lights out. You know how it is. New place, new energy, everyone's still riding that first night of camp buzz. We ended up down by the river, sat on the grass, listening to the water, just talking. The kind of aimless, sprawling conversation you have when you're 12 or 13 and the whole night feels endless. At some point, a teacher found us. "Hey, what are you all doing out here? Come inside." Then the follow-up, the one that in hindsight we really should have listened to. "Don't wander off. Stay with your group." And what did we say? "Yes, sir. We'll head back soon." Did we head back soon? No. No, we did not. We were kids being kids, a little rebellious, a little too pleased with ourselves for having snuck off in the first place. The teacher walked back toward the buildings. We stayed exactly where we were, sitting in the grass by the river, watching the water move in the dark. I want you to remember that detail. We were told, clearly, and we ignored it anyway. Here's something about those empty shelter houses scattered around the property. The windows sat low. Low enough that if you were standing at full height, you could see straight into the room from about waist level up. Perfect for peeking inside out of pure curiosity, which, obviously, is exactly what a bunch of bored kids would do. After we'd talked ourselves out down by the river, we finally stood up to head back to the group. And that's when I saw one of the empty shelter houses off to the side. And because I am who I am, because being the ghost girl had become basically my whole personality at that point, I decided to have a little fun. I pointed toward the dark window of that empty shelter and said, dead serious, "Hey, what's that? In there?" Instant reaction. Everyone's head snapped toward the building. A couple of them actually gasped. Classic me, right? Works every time. Except this time, everyone looked, and genuinely, there was nothing there. Empty room, empty window. Exactly what you'd expect from an unused cabin at a summer camp. My friends turned back to me, already annoyed, already halfway into a "Seriously, Adele?" And that's when I noticed something was wrong. One of my friends wasn't looking at me anymore. Her face had gone completely white. Not scared white, drained white. The kind of pale that makes your stomach drop before you even know why. She wasn't saying anything. She was just pointing, silently, at the same empty shelter house I'd just joked about. And when the rest of us turned to look again, there was something standing inside. I need you to understand. This wasn't a shadow. This wasn't a trick of the light, a coat rack, a mistaken shape in the dark that your brain fills in with a face. There was a shape, a human shape, standing perfectly still inside that empty room, facing the window. A woman. I squinted, trying to make out details through the dark glass, and what I could see through the silhouette was this. Her hair sat right around shoulder length, not long, not short. And she was facing us. Not looking around the room, not moving, not doing anything except standing there, watching 6 kids who had absolutely no business being awake at that hour, staring back at her. Nobody breathed. I don't think anyone in that group made a single sound for what felt like an entire minute, though it was probably only a few seconds. Then someone screamed. I don't even remember who started it. It just cascaded. One scream triggering the next, and suddenly all 6 of us were sprinting back toward the main buildings, shrieking the whole way, not daring to look back at that window even once. We burst into the group area completely hysterical, and obviously that got attention fast. Teachers came running. "What happened? What's wrong with you?" And all of us, talking over each other, breathless. There's someone standing in the empty house! We saw her!" Looking back, there was a very specific, very uncomfortable feeling sitting underneath all that panic. Guilt. We'd been told to stay with the group. We didn't. And whatever consequence that carried, we'd just walk straight into it. The next morning, we all showed up to breakfast looking like we hadn't slept, because, frankly, we hadn't. Not really. The canteen lady, one of the camp staff who ran the dining hall and lived nearby, clocked it immediately. "What was all that noise last night?" she asked, half amused, half curious. One of my friends told her everything. The river, the shelter house, the woman standing in the window, watching us. The canteen lady's face changed the moment she heard it. "This place," she said slowly, "really does have a woman haunting it." She wasn't smiling anymore. She told us she'd worked at that camp for years, that after events wrapped up, she and her own kid would usually stay behind to help clean the canteen. And more than once, while doing exactly that, she'd been bothered by that same woman herself. But then she told us the detail that made my stomach drop even further. Every full moon, she said, there's a smell. Flowers. If you ever smell flowers out of nowhere here, that's when she comes out. I sat there doing the math in my head, and the timing hit me like ice water. The night before. The night we'd been down by the river. The night we saw her standing in that window had been a full moon. And full moons, as anyone who's ever tracked one knows, don't just last one night. They stretch across 2, sometimes 3 nights around the middle of the lunar cycle, which meant tonight, the second night of our trip, was still a full moon. I remember turning to my friends at that table and saying it out loud, half to warn them, half because some old, dumb instinct in me still wanted to make them squirm a little. You guys realized last night was a full moon, right? And tonight still is. We're right in the middle of it. I said it like a joke. It didn't feel like one anymore. The day went on. Activities happened. We tried to shove the memory of that window down somewhere manageable, the way kids do, distracting ourselves with games and food and the normal noise of camp life. But night came anyway. It always does. That evening, a group of us were in our sleeping quarters, sitting around eating snacks, talking, doing everything we could to avoid thinking about the thing we'd all seen less than 24 hours earlier. A teacher's voice eventually carried down the hall, telling everyone to wrap it up and get ready for lights out. And that's when it happened. Exactly the way the canteen lady said it would. I smelled flowers. Not faint, not something you'd second guess. A thick, unmistakable floral scent, something close to roses, filling the air out of absolutely nowhere in a wooden cabin in the middle of a forest at night. I sat frozen for a second. Then I called out to my friends, my voice already shaking. Do you guys smell that? Do you smell it? They didn't believe me. Of course they didn't. Why would they? I was the girl who cried ghost. One of them said flatly, "No, we don't smell anything." Classic response to classic me. Just be quiet for a second, I told them. Stop talking and actually smell the air. It's faint, but it's there. They went quiet, and within seconds, one by one, their faces changed. "Oh my God, it's actually there," one of them whispered. "I told you," I said. "I've been smelling it since before we even started getting ready for bed." That's when some instinct, something I can't fully explain, some pull at the back of my skull, made me look toward the far end of the room. Our sleeping quarters happened to be positioned closest to the canteen building, and near that canteen door, at the very edge of where our room ended, I saw her, the woman. She was wearing something like a dress, a skirt that fell just past the knee, old-fashioned in the way it hung. And she wasn't standing in a doorway. She wasn't walking down a hall. She was walking directly out of the wall. I watched it happen in real time. 1 second, solid wood paneling. The next, her shape emerging through it like the wall wasn't even there, moving with this slow, deliberate motion toward the room beside ours. She reached the corner, turned, and vanished. Just gone. Mid-step, mid-motion, swallowed back into nothing. None of us moved. None of us spoke. We just stared at each other, all of us locked in this shared, silent understanding that we had all just watched the exact same impossible thing happen. And there was no version of reality where we could pretend otherwise. Then, all at once, the screaming started, and we bolted. Out of that room, down the hall, sprinting straight toward the teacher's quarters, shrieking the entire way like the building itself was chasing us. The teachers came out fast, half panicked themselves. "What is wrong with you? Why are you screaming?" It took a long time to calm us down enough to even form full sentences. Looking back on it now, over a decade later, here's what sits with me the most. I spent so long being the kid who faked seeing ghosts, who used that reputation to mess with people, who thought it was harmless fun to make my friends jump at shadows I'd invented myself. And then, on one ordinary camping trip, something real walked straight into the middle of one of my own jokes and made a fool out of every prank I'd ever pulled. I think about the timing constantly. The teacher's warning we ignored. The window we shouldn't have looked into. The full moon stretching across both nights exactly the way the canteen lady described. The smell of flowers that nobody could argue with once they actually stopped to notice it. And I think about the fact that the very last thing I did before we saw her standing in that shelter house was point at an empty window and pretend something was there. I don't do that anymore. Haven't since that trip. Because I learned the hard way that when it comes to the things you can't see, the things some of us claim to sense and most people write off as nonsense, you don't get to decide when the joke's over. Sometimes something else decides that for you. That's the story exactly as it happened, as best as I can still remember it all these years later. If you've ever pulled a prank that came back to bite you in a way you didn't expect, or if something like this has happened to you at a camp, a school trip, anywhere out in the woods, tell me about it below. I want to hear it. And if you stuck around till the very end of this one, thanks for sitting in the dark with me.